Marcus Webb wiped the sweat from his forehead as he checked the atmospheric processor readings for the third time that morning. The massive machines hummed quietly around him, converting the thin air of Kepler 442b into something humans could breathe without masks. He had been alone on this mining colony for 8 months now, and the solitude was starting to get to him. The planet was beautiful in its own harsh way. Red mountains stretched toward purple skies, and the twin suns cast strange shadows that danced across the rocky landscape. Most people thought this posting was punishment, being sent to maintain equipment on a world where nothing interesting ever happened. Marcus didn't mind it, though. The work was steady, the pay was good, and nobody bothered him out here. He was adjusting a pressure valve when the ground shook. At first, he thought it might be another mining blast from the automated excavators working the eastern ridge. But the tremor was different somehow, more focused, like something heavy had crashed nearby. Marcus set down his tools and walked outside. The afternoon sky was clear except for a few wisps of orange clouds. He scanned the horizon, looking for smoke or dust that might indicate where the impact had occurred. Nothing seemed out of place. Then he heard it, a sound unlike anything he had ever experienced. It was part roar, part song, part electronic hum all mixed together. The noise seemed to come from everywhere at once, vibrating through his bones and making his teeth ache. Whatever had made that sound was big, and it was close. Marcus grabbed his emergency kit and toolkit from the workshop. If something had crashed, there might be survivors who needed help. He followed the sound toward a ridge about half a kilometer from his facility. The noise came again, weaker this time, and definitely in distress. When he crested the ridge, Marcus stopped dead in his tracks. His brain struggled to process what he was seeing. A creature lay in a crater of its own making, easily 30 meters from nose to tail. Its body was covered in scales that seemed to be made of living crystal, shifting between blue and green as they caught the light. Massive wings, each one bigger than his entire workshop, were folded against its sides. One wing was clearly damaged, with silver liquid dripping from torn membranes. The creature looked like every drawing of a dragon Marcus had ever seen, except this one was real and hurt and unlike anything that should exist on this planet. Its head was the size of a small building, with intelligent eyes that glowed like stars. When those eyes fixed on him, Marcus felt his heart skip a beat. The dragon tried to lift its head, but couldn't manage it. Instead, it made that strange musical sound again, softer now, almost pleading. Marcus found himself taking a step forward before his common sense kicked in. This thing could eat him in one bite, if it wanted to. But then he saw movement near the dragon's front legs. Something small and fragile was nestled there, barely visible against the creature's massive form. Marcus squinted and realized it was a smaller version of the dragon, no bigger than a house cat. The little one was barely moving, its tiny scales flickering between solid and transparent, like a failing hologram. The big dragon followed his gaze and made a soft, keening sound. She gently nudged the small one with her nose, but it barely responded. Marcus didn't need to be a xenobiologist to recognize a mother's distress. This massive creature was desperately worried about her child. The dragon looked back at Marcus, and he saw something in those alien eyes that transcended species. It was the same look he had seen in his own mother's eyes when his little sister had been sick with fever as a child. It was fear, hope, and desperate love all mixed together. Slowly, carefully, the dragon began to move. Despite her obvious pain, she stretched out one massive foreleg and gently scooped up her offspring. Then, in a movement that should have been impossible for something so large, she crawled toward Marcus. Each movement left trails of that silver liquid on the rocky ground. Marcus wanted to run. Every instinct screamed at him to get away from this enormous predator. But something kept him rooted in place. Maybe it was professional curiosity, or maybe it was the look in the creature's eyes. Either way, he stood his ground as 30 meters of alien dragon slowly approached him. When she was about 10 meters away, the dragon stopped. She carefully placed her young one on the ground between them, then backed away slightly. The message was clear even without words. She was asking for help. Marcus knelt down and got his first good look at the small dragon. It was beautiful and heartbreaking at the same time. Its scales were the same crystal material as its mother's, but they kept shifting from solid to translucent. Tiny wings no bigger than his hands twitched occasionally. The little creature was breathing, but each breath seemed to be a struggle. The mother dragon made another sound, different this time. She moved to a patch of smooth dirt nearby and began to scratch marks with one claw. The symbols meant nothing to Marcus, but the intent was obvious. She was trying to communicate. Marcus reached into his toolkit and pulled out his tablet computer. The screen's glow caught the dragon's attention immediately. Her eyes widened, and she made an excited, chirping sound. Marcus activated the device's drawing program and sketched a simple stick figure, then pointed to himself. The dragon's massive head bobbed up and down. She understood. She moved back to her dirt canvas and drew what looked like two dragons, one large and one small. Then she drew something that might have been the planet's core, with wavy lines radiating outward. After that, she drew what looked like the small dragon fading away, becoming dotted lines instead of solid ones. Marcus studied the crude drawing. The big dragon was telling him a story. Something had happened in the planet's depths that was making the little one sick. The wavy lines might represent radiation or some kind of energy. The fading image of the small dragon suggested it was dying. The mother dragon moved to another section of dirt and began drawing again. This time she drew the stick figure Marcus had made to represent himself, then drew it next to the small dragon. She looked at Marcus hopefully. Marcus felt the weight of that gaze. This alien mother was asking him to save her child. She had somehow decided that he, a human engineer who fixed air processors and mining equipment, might be able to help where her own kind had failed. He looked down at the small dragon again. Its breathing was getting weaker, and the flickering between solid and transparent was happening faster. Whatever was wrong with it, time was running out. Marcus made a decision that would change everything. He carefully picked up the small dragon, surprised by how warm it felt despite its translucent appearance. It weighed almost nothing, as if it were made of light instead of matter. The mother dragon tensed when he touched her offspring, but she didn't attack. Instead, she watched with desperate attention as Marcus gently cradled the small creature. Looking into those massive, intelligent eyes, Marcus nodded. He couldn't speak her language, and she couldn't speak his, but some messages didn't need words. He was going to try to help. The dragon's response was immediate and overwhelming. She let out a sound that was part relief, part gratitude, and part continued worry. Then she carefully stood up, despite her injuries, and began following Marcus back toward the facility. As they walked, Marcus wondered what he had gotten himself into. He was an engineer, not a doctor. He fixed machines, not alien creatures that seemed to be made partly of energy. But looking down at the dying youngling in his arms, he knew he had to try. Behind him, the massive dragon limped along, leaving a trail of silver blood on the rocks. She had trusted her most precious thing to a complete stranger from another world. Now it was up to Marcus to prove that her faith in humanity hadn't been misplaced. The twin suns were setting as they reached the facility, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. Whatever happened next, Marcus knew his quiet life on Kepler, for 42B was about to become very complicated. Marcus carried the small dragon into his workshop, while its mother waited outside. The facility wasn't built for creatures her size, but she managed to get her massive head through the main doorway. Her glowing eyes watched every movement as Marcus gently placed her offspring on his main workbench. The workshop was filled with diagnostic equipment that Marcus used to troubleshoot mining machinery. He had scanners that could detect energy patterns, thermal imaging devices, and electromagnetic field readers. If this little creature was sick, maybe his tools could figure out what was wrong. Marcus activated his primary scanner and aimed it at the small dragon. The readings that appeared on his screen made him blink in confusion. According to the scanner, the creature was giving off massive amounts of energy while also barely registering as a solid object. The thermal readings showed it was simultaneously very hot and very cold in different parts of its body. The mother dragon made a questioning sound. Marcus turned the scanner screen toward her, so she could see the confusing readouts. Her reaction was immediate and intense. She began making rapid clicking sounds while pointing at different parts of the display with one enormous claw tip. Marcus realized she was trying to explain what the readings meant. He switched his tablet to drawing mode again and handed it to her. The dragon took the device with surprising delicacy, holding it steady with two claws while using a third to draw on the screen. What she drew looked like a map of energy flowing through a body. There were bright lines that seemed to represent some kind of power system, with several dark spots where the energy wasn't flowing properly. She pointed to these dark areas repeatedly, then looked at her dying offspring with obvious distress. Marcus studied the drawing. If he was understanding correctly, these creatures were somehow powered by energy that flowed through their bodies like electricity through circuits. The little one's power system was failing in several critical areas. It was like having a computer with multiple damaged processors trying to run on insufficient power. He looked at his diagnostic equipment with new understanding. These tools were designed to analyze energy systems in machines. Maybe they could help him understand the energy systems in living creatures too. Marcus spent the next hour running every test he could think of. He measured electromagnetic fields, energy output, thermal patterns, and even tried to detect quantum fluctuations. Slowly, a picture began to emerge. The small dragon wasn't just a biological creature. It was some kind of hybrid between living tissue and pure energy. Its body existed in multiple states at once, shifting between matter and energy as needed. The problem was that the switching mechanism was broken. Instead of smoothly transitioning between states, it was stuck flickering rapidly between both, which was exhausting its power reserves. Marcus showed his findings to the mother dragon, using a combination of diagrams on his tablet and gestures toward the scanner readouts. She nodded vigorously, then began drawing more complex pictures. These showed other creatures like herself, but also included images of what looked like underground caverns filled with crystalline structures. The next set of drawings showed waves of harmful energy coming from space and hitting the planet. After that, the crystalline structures in the caves became dark and broken. The final image showed eggs that couldn't hatch properly, and younglings that flickered and faded just like the one on Marcus's workbench. Marcus began to understand the bigger picture. These dragons, whatever they were, lived in underground cities. Something had damaged their breeding grounds with radiation or energy interference. This little one was probably one of the few survivors, but the damage to its energy regulation system was killing it. The mother dragon watched him process this information, then drew one more image. This one showed Marcus's stick figure next to some kind of device connected to the small dragon. Above the device, she drew symbols that might have represented stability or healing. She was asking him to build something, a machine that could fix what was wrong with her child. Marcus looked at his workshop full of spare parts and half-finished projects. He was good at fixing energy regulation problems in mining equipment, power distribution systems, voltage regulators, quantum processing units. But those were machines, not living creatures. Then again, if these dragons were partly energy-based, maybe the same principles would apply. The little creature needed something to stabilize its energy flow and prevent the dangerous flickering between matter and energy states. Marcus began pulling components from his storage bins. He had quantum processors that could handle rapid state changes. He had biocompatible materials from medical supply kits. He had energy converters and stabilization circuits. The mother dragon watched with intense interest as he laid out parts on another workbench. When he held up a quantum processor chip, her eyes brightened and she made an approving sound. When he showed her biocompatible gel that was used for interfacing machines with living tissue, she nodded enthusiastically. Marcus realized she understood technology better than he had expected. These weren't primitive creatures. They were intelligent beings with their own advanced understanding of energy and matter. Working together, they began to develop a better communication system. Marcus programmed his tablet to display patterns of colored lights. The dragon quickly learned that different colors and patterns could represent different concepts. Red meant danger or damage. Blue meant energy or power. Green meant healthy or working properly. White meant change or movement. Using the simple light language, the dragon began to teach Marcus about her species. They called themselves something that translated roughly to the Flowing Ones, because they could move between matter and energy states at will. They had lived deep inside planets for millions of years, tending to the energy flows that kept worlds stable. Their young normally developed this ability gradually over many years. But the cosmic radiation that had damaged their breeding chambers had caused this little one to develop too quickly. Her energy regulation system was trying to do things it wasn't ready for, like a computer program running on hardware that couldn't handle the processing demands. Marcus asked through light patterns if there were others like the little one. The dragon's response was heartbreaking. She showed him that this youngling was the only survivor from dozens of eggs. She was the last hope for their species on this planet. The weight of responsibility settled on Marcus's shoulders like a heavy blanket. This wasn't just about saving one small creature. The survival of an entire species might depend on what he could build in his workshop, with spare parts and determination. Marcus worked through the night, while the mother dragon dozed fitfully near the workshop entrance. Every few hours she would wake up and check on her offspring, making soft musical sounds that might have been lullabies in her language. The small dragon's condition was getting worse. Its flickering between states was happening faster, and each transition seemed to drain more of its remaining energy. Marcus could see that time was running out, but he was beginning to understand how these creatures worked. Their bodies were like biological quantum computers, processing information and energy simultaneously. The little one's problem was that its processing system couldn't keep up with the energy demands of rapid state switching. What it needed was something like a coprocessor, a device that could help regulate the energy flow and smooth out the transitions between matter and energy states. Marcus had built similar systems for mining equipment that had to handle rapid changes in power demand. He worked with desperate focus, connecting quantum processing chips to biocompatible interfaces. The mother dragon helped by using her breath to precisely heat components that needed to be welded. Her scales could conduct specific types of energy, which allowed Marcus to test his circuits without risking dangerous electrical feedback. By dawn, Marcus had created something that looked like a collar made of crystalline circuits and flexible metal mesh. It was designed to wrap around the small dragon's neck and connect directly to its energy regulation system. The mother dragon examined his work carefully, her glowing eyes studying every connection and component. Finally, she looked at Marcus and made a sound that he had come to recognize as approval mixed with desperate hope. Marcus looked at the device in his hands, then at the dying creature on his workbench. He was about to attempt something that no human had ever tried before. He was going to interface human technology with an alien energy-based life form. If he succeeded, he might save not just one small dragon, but an entire species. If he failed, he would watch as the last hope of an ancient race faded away on his workshop table. The small dragon's breathing was becoming more labored, and its form was now flickering so rapidly that it looked more like a strobe light than a living creature. Whatever Marcus was going to do, he had to do it now. He picked up the biomechanical collar and looked into the mother dragon's eyes. She nodded once, giving him permission to try the impossible. Marcus held the biomechanical collar in his hands and felt the weight of an entire species' future pressing down on him. The small dragon on his workbench was flickering so rapidly between solid and translucent that it hurt to look at directly. Each flicker seemed weaker than the last, like a dying light bulb struggling to stay on. The mother dragon moved closer, her massive head hovering just above the workbench. Her glowing eyes reflected both desperate hope and terrible fear. She had placed all her trust in this small human, who fixed machines for a living, and now the moment of truth had arrived. Marcus studied the collar one more time. The crystalline circuits glowed softly with stored energy, and the biocompatible mesh was designed to interface directly with the dragon's energy regulation system. In theory, it should work like a pacemaker for an energy-based life form. In practice, he was about to perform the first interspecies biomechanical surgery in human history. The small dragon's breathing became even more labored. Marcus realized he couldn't wait any longer. He gently lifted the tiny creature, surprised again by how warm it felt despite being only partially solid. Its eyes opened briefly, revealing points of light that seemed to look directly into his soul before flickering close again. Marcus positioned the collar around the small dragon's neck. The biocompatible mesh automatically adjusted its size, forming a perfect fit. The mother dragon made a soft, encouraging sound, though Marcus could hear the tension in her voice. Before activating the device, Marcus ran one final diagnostic scan. The readings showed that the small dragon's energy levels were dropping fast. Whatever was going to happen needed to happen now. Marcus pressed the activation switch. For a moment, nothing changed. The collar glowed slightly brighter, and Marcus could hear a faint humming sound as the quantum processors came online. The small dragon continued its rapid flickering between states, showing no sign of improvement. Then, suddenly, something went wrong. The collar began to pulse with dangerous amounts of energy. The small dragon's flickering became even more violent, and sparks began jumping between its scales. Marcus realized with horror that instead of stabilizing the creature's energy system, his device was overloading it. The mother dragon roared in alarm and moved toward the workbench. Marcus could see energy building up in her throat, the same silver light that he had seen dripping from her wounded wing. If the device killed her offspring, she would probably incinerate him on the spot. Marcus frantically tried to shut down the collar, but the controls weren't responding. The quantum processors were locked in some kind of feedback loop with the dragon's natural energy systems. The power levels kept climbing higher and higher. The small dragon's form began to stretch and distort as competing energy fields pulled it in different directions. Marcus could see that in seconds, the creature would either explode from energy overload or be torn apart by the conflicting forces. In desperation, Marcus did the only thing he could think of. He grabbed the collar with both hands, trying to physically disconnect it from the small dragon's neck. The moment his skin touched the activated device, electricity coursed through his body like liquid fire. Marcus screamed as thousands of volts of alien energy flowed through him. His vision went white, and every nerve in his body felt like it was being burned from the inside out. But he held on, using his body as a conductor to drain excess energy away from the small dragon. The mother dragon saw what was happening and reacted instantly. Instead of attacking Marcus, she wrapped her massive form around both him and her offspring. Her crystalline scales began to glow as she absorbed the dangerous energy overflow, channeling it safely into ground through her own body. The three of them became a living circuit. Energy flowed from the overloaded collar through Marcus's body into the mother dragon's scales, then harmlessly into the planet's crust. It was agonizing for both human and dragon, but it worked. Slowly, the energy levels began to stabilize. The violent pulsing of the collar settled into a steady rhythm. The small dragon's flickering became less frantic, more controlled. Marcus felt the electrical fire and his nerves begin to fade to a manageable burn. After what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes, the emergency passed. The collar was working properly, its quantum processors synchronized with the small dragon's natural energy systems. Marcus released his grip and collapsed onto the workbench, his hands smoking and his whole body shaking from electrical shock. The mother dragon carefully unwrapped herself from around them. Her scales were dim from the effort channeling so much dangerous energy, but her eyes were focused entirely on her offspring. The small dragon was lying very still. For a terrifying moment, Marcus thought they had been too late. Then he saw the creature's chest rise and fall in a steady, peaceful rhythm. The rapid flickering had stopped completely. Its form remained solid and stable, no longer trapped between matter and energy states. Marcus activated a scanner with trembling hands. The readout showed something that made him blink in disbelief. Not only were the small dragon's energy levels stable, they were actually stronger than before. The biomechanical collar wasn't just fixing the creature's regulation problems, it was enhancing its natural abilities. The mother dragon saw the scanner results and made a sound that was pure joy mixed with relief. She gently nuzzled her offspring with the tip of her massive snout. The little creature stirred, opened its eyes, and for the first time since Marcus had found them, it moved with purpose and strength. The small dragon sat up on Marcus's workbench and looked around with bright, curious eyes. When it saw Marcus, it made a sound like wind chimes mixed with purring. Then it did something that took Marcus's breath away. The creature deliberately shifted from solid to translucent and back again, but this time the transition was smooth and controlled. It was no longer trapped in a painful flickering state. It could choose when and how to change between matter and energy, just like its species was supposed to do. The mother dragon was practically vibrating with excitement. She began making rapid musical sounds while gesturing toward her offspring and then toward Marcus. Even without perfect translation, her meaning was clear. She was expressing gratitude beyond anything words could convey. Marcus slumped against his workbench, exhausted but amazed by what had just happened. His hands were burned and his body ached from the electrical trauma, but he had never felt more satisfied with a job well done. He had saved not just one life, but possibly an entire species. The small dragon explored its new abilities with the enthusiasm of a healthy child. It shifted between states, testing the smooth transitions that the collar made possible. Sometimes it would become completely energy-based, appearing as a small constellation of moving lights. Other times it solidified completely, its crystalline scales catching and reflecting the workshop's illumination in beautiful patterns. What amazed Marcus most was how the creature seemed to understand that the collar was responsible for its recovery. It kept touching the device with tiny claws, and whenever it looked at Marcus, its eyes sparkled with what could only be described as gratitude. The mother dragon spent several minutes examining the collar's integration with her offspring's body. She used different types of energy emissions to test the device's responses, checking its compatibility with her child's natural systems. Whatever she found seemed to satisfy her completely. Then she turned her attention to Marcus. He was still recovering from the electrical shock, his hands wrapped in makeshift bandages made from shop rags. The dragon looked at his injuries with obvious concern. She moved to a clear area of the workshop floor and began drawing the dust with one claw tip. This time her pictures showed Marcus herself and the small dragon, but there were other figures as well. Dozens of dragon shapes, all gathered together in what looked like a massive underground chamber. She was telling him that there were others of her kind, and that news of what had happened here would spread to all of them. Marcus realized that his actions had consequences far beyond saving one small life. He had proven that humans and dragons could work together to solve impossible problems. The mother dragon drew more pictures showing advanced technology, energy manipulation on a vast scale, and what looked like space travel. She was offering to share knowledge with him, to teach him things about energy and matter that human science had never dreamed of. But first, she drew one more picture. It showed Marcus herself and the small dragon working together on new projects. She was asking him to continue the partnership they had formed. She wanted him to help not just with her own offspring, but with rebuilding her entire species. Marcus looked at the small dragon playing happily on his workbench, its collar glowing softly as it regulated energy flows that kept the creature healthy and strong. Then he looked at the mother dragon's hopeful expression. He had come to this planet to maintain atmospheric processors and live quietly by himself. Instead, he had become humanity's first interspecies engineer and possibly changed the future of two different civilizations. Marcus smiled despite his exhaustion and pain. He pointed to himself, then to both dragons, then made a gesture that encompassed his entire workshop. His meaning was as clear as the dragon's drawings had been. He was ready to get back to work. Over the next few days, Marcus watched in amazement as the small dragon grew stronger and more confident. The creature, which he had started thinking of as Nova because of the way it sparkled when shifting between energy states, was learning to use its enhanced abilities with remarkable speed. Nova could now control its energy transformations perfectly. One moment it would be solid crystal and warm flesh, playing with tools on Marcus's workbench like a curious cat. The next moment it would become pure energy, zipping around the workshop as a small cloud of glowing particles before forming somewhere else entirely. The mother dragon, whom Marcus had begun calling Vera because of the way she verified everything he did with careful observation, spent hours teaching her offspring new skills. She would demonstrate complex energy manipulations, and Nova would copy them with the enhanced control that the biomechanical collar provided. Marcus learned that dragons normally took decades to master abilities that Nova was picking up in days. The collar wasn't just fixing the creature's damaged systems. It was allowing access to capabilities that would have taken years to develop naturally. But the most remarkable thing wasn't Nova's rapid learning. It was how the young dragon had begun to understand human technology. Marcus first noticed it when he was working on a routine maintenance task for the atmospheric processors. Nova had been playing nearby, shifting between solid and energy forms, when suddenly the creature became very still and focused. Its glowing eyes were fixed on the quantum processing unit Marcus was repairing. Nova approached the device and began making soft musical sounds. To Marcus's surprise, the processor's efficiency readings improved dramatically. Somehow, the small dragon was optimizing the quantum circuits just by being near them and focusing its attention on them. Marcus called Vera over to see what was happening. The massive dragon examined the improved processor readings, then looked at her offspring with what could only be described as pride mixed with amazement. She began drawing rapidly in the dust, showing Marcus pictures of energy flowing through mechanical systems with dragon-like creatures guiding and enhancing the flow. Marcus realized that Nova wasn't just learning to control its own energy systems. The combination of dragon abilities and human technology was creating something entirely new. Nova could interface directly with quantum processors, understanding their function on an intuitive level that went far beyond normal programming. Over the following days, Marcus began experimenting with this discovery. He would work on various devices while Nova watched and learned. The small dragon quickly figured out how to improve power distribution systems, enhance scanner accuracy, and even boost the efficiency of the atmospheric processors that kept the colony running. Vera was fascinated by these developments. She spent hours drawing complex diagrams that showed the integration of biological energy manipulation with mechanical systems. Through their improvised light pattern language, she explained that her species had always been able to work with natural energy flows, but they had never encountered artificial systems sophisticated enough to interface with their abilities. Marcus began to understand that he had accidentally created something unprecedented. Nova was becoming a bridge between two completely different approaches to technology. Dragons work with energy instinctively, while humans build machines to control and direct energy through precise engineering. Nova could do both. The implications were staggering. If dragons could enhance human technology, while humans provided mechanical frameworks for dragon abilities, the possibilities were limitless. Energy systems that were perfectly efficient, space travel powered by conscious energy manipulation, communication across vast distances through quantum biological interfaces. But Marcus's peaceful experimentation was interrupted when his communication system detected incoming ships. The colony's automated sensors showed 3 vessels approaching Kepler 442b. According to their identification signals, they were scientific research ships from the Earth Colonial Authority. Someone had detected the unusual energy readings coming from Marcus's facility and decided to investigate. Marcus felt a chill of fear. If government scientists discovered Vera and Nova, the dragons would probably end up in laboratories, studied and experimented on like specimens. The partnership he had built with them would be destroyed, and any chance of peaceful cooperation between the species would be lost. Vera seemed to sense his distress. She had learned to read human body language well enough to recognize when Marcus was worried. Through their light pattern communication system, she asked what was wrong. Marcus showed her the scanner readings of the approaching ships. He drew simple pictures showing humans in white coats, putting Nova in a cage and separating her from Vera. The dragon's reaction was immediate and intense. Her scales flared with dangerous energy, and she let out a roar that shook the entire facility. Nova, sensing its mother's distress, quickly shifted to pure energy form and hovered protectively near Vera's head. The small dragon had grown remarkably in just a few days, and its energy signature was now powerful enough to overload Marcus's scanners. Marcus realized that if the approaching scientists detected energy readings as strong, they would bring military ships next time. The secret of the dragon's existence would be exposed, and everything would change for the worse. But Vera surprised him. Instead of preparing to fight or flee, she moved to the workshop floor and began drawing the most complex diagram Marcus had ever seen her create. It showed the underground city she had mentioned before, vast chambers filled with crystalline structures and dozens of dragons. But this time, the drawing included human figures working alongside the dragons, sharing technology and knowledge. She was showing him a vision of what could be possible if first contact happened on the right terms. Not as specimens to be studied, but as equal sharing discoveries that could benefit both species. Then she drew a second picture. This one showed Marcus standing between the approaching ships and the dragon communities, somehow serving as a translator and ambassador. She was asking him to help make peaceful contact possible. Marcus looked at the scanner readings again. The ships would arrive in less than 6 hours. If he was going to do anything to influence how this first contact played out, he needed to act fast. Nova seemed to understand the urgency of the situation. The young dragon flew over to Marcus's communication equipment and began studying it with intense focus. Within minutes, The creature had figured out how the quantum transmission systems worked. Then Nova did something that left Marcus speechless. The dragon interfaced directly with the communication array, using its energy abilities to boost the signal strength far beyond normal parameters. Suddenly, Marcus had access to communication channels that should have been impossible with his equipment. Vera watched her offspring's technological breakthrough with obvious pride. Then she turned to Marcus and made a series of sounds that he had learned meant urgency and importance. She was telling him that now was the time to make his choice. Marcus could contact the approaching ships directly and try to explain the situation before they arrived. He could attempt to set up a first contact scenario that gave the dragon some control over how they were introduced to human authorities. Or he could help Vera and Nova hide and hope that the scientists would find nothing interesting and leave. But as he looked at Nova's glowing collar and remembered everything they had accomplished together, Marcus realized there was a third option. He could demonstrate what was possible when humans and dragons worked together as partners instead of subjects and researchers. Marcus activated the enhanced communication system that Nova had created. The signal was so clear and powerful that he could probably reach Earth itself if he wanted to. Instead, he opened a channel to the lead research ship. The response came immediately. A surprised voice asked how a simple mining colony was generating such a strong communication signal and why their sensors were picking up impossible energy readings from his location. Marcus took a deep breath and looked at Vera and Nova. Both dragons were watching him with complete trust. They were depending on him to find the right words to explain something that no human had ever had to explain before. He pressed a transmit button and began to speak. What he said in the next few minutes would determine whether first contact between humans and dragons started with wonder and cooperation or with fear and containment. Marcus had become humanity's first ambassador to an alien species, and he was about to prove that some of the most important diplomatic breakthroughs happen not in formal meeting rooms, but in small workshops where individuals choose to trust each other despite their differences. The dragons waited quietly while Marcus chose the words that would shape the future of both their peoples. Marcus held the communication device in his shaking hands, while Vera and Nova watched him with complete trust. The approaching research ships were expecting to find unusual energy readings and maybe some equipment malfunctions. They had no idea they were about to become part of the most important first contact in human history. Taking a deep breath, Marcus pressed the transmit button and began speaking in the calmest voice he could manage. "This is Marcus Webb at Mining Station Alpha 7 on Kepler 442b. I need to speak with your senior xenobiologist and your diplomatic liaison immediately. We have a situation here that requires very careful handling." The response came back quickly, filled with confusion and curiosity. "Station Alpha 7, this is Research Vessel Discovery. We don't show any diplomatic personnel in our crew, and our xenobiologist is Dr. Adams. What exactly is the nature of your situation?" Marcus looked at Vera, who nodded encouragingly. Nova had shifted to its energy form and was hovering near the communication array, somehow boosting the signal quality to make the transmission crystal clear. "Dr. Adams, my name is Marcus Webb, and I'm about to tell you something that will sound impossible. 3 days ago, I made first contact with an intelligent alien species. They are peaceful, highly advanced, and desperately need our help. More importantly, they have knowledge and abilities that could revolutionize human technology." The silence that followed lasted almost a full minute. When Dr. Adams finally responded, his voice was carefully controlled. "Mr. Webb, we're going to need you to repeat that statement and provide some kind of verification. Are you claiming you've encountered extraterrestrial life?" Marcus had expected skepticism. "Dr. Adams, I'm going to prove it to you. The energy readings your sensors are detecting are coming from 2 members of this species who are currently in my workshop. One is an adult female approximately 30 meters long, and the other is her offspring who I helped save using a combination of human technology and dragon biology." Dragons? Dr. Adams sounded like he was struggling to process what he was hearing. "That's what they look like, but they're much more than that. They're energy-based life forms who can shift between matter and energy states. They've been living in the planet's core for millions of years, maintaining the energy flows that keep worlds stable. Dr. Adams, They call themselves the Flowing Ones, and they're dying out because cosmic radiation damaged their breeding chambers. Marcus paused to let this information sink in, then continued. The young one I'm caring for may be the last of her generation, but with human technology, I was able to create a biomechanical interface that not only saved her life, but enhanced her natural abilities. She can now interface directly with quantum processing systems in ways that improve their efficiency by orders of magnitude. Vera had been listening to this conversation through the translator program Marcus had created using their light pattern language. Now she moved to the communication array and made a series of musical sounds that Nova somehow converted into electromagnetic signals and transmitted directly to the research ships. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Dr. Adams's voice became urgent and excited. Mr. Webb, we just received a transmission that appears to be coming from your location, but it's not using any human communication protocols. The signal is incredibly complex and appears to be modulated by some kind of biological energy field. That was Vera introducing herself, Dr. Adams. She's the adult dragon I mentioned. Her offspring, who I call Nova, has learned to interface with our communication systems and is translating her speech into signals your equipment can detect. Marcus could hear multiple voices talking rapidly in the background of the research ship's transmission. Someone was shouting about unprecedented energy signatures and impossible biological readings. Dr. Adams came back on the line, his voice now filled with barely contained excitement. Mr. Webb, we're going to need to land and assess the situation immediately. If what you're telling us is true, this is the most significant discovery in human history. That's exactly why I contacted you first, Dr. Adams. These beings are not specimens to be studied. They're people with their own culture, technology, and needs. Vera risked everything to save her child's life, and she's placed her trust in humanity based on our interaction. How we handle the next few hours will determine whether this becomes a partnership that benefits both species or a tragedy that destroys any chance of peaceful cooperation. Marcus looked at Nova, who had returned to solid form, and was sitting on his workbench wearing the biomechanical collar, like a badge of honor. The young dragon seemed to understand the importance of what was happening. Dr. Adams, I'm going to make a request that might sound strange. When you land, I want you to approach slowly and respectfully. Vera is injured and protective of her offspring. She's demonstrated incredible restraint in trusting me, but she's also capable of generating enough energy to level this entire facility if she feels threatened. Understood, Mr. Webb. We'll follow your lead on contact protocols. Over the next hour, Marcus worked with Vera and Nova to prepare for the arrival of the human research team. Vera drew detailed pictures showing how she wanted the first meeting to proceed. She wanted to demonstrate her intelligence and peaceful intentions, while also making it clear that she was not a subject for experimentation. Nova surprised everyone by suggesting its own contribution to the first contact protocol. The young dragon had been studying Marcus's computer systems and had figured out how to create visual displays on his monitor screens. Nova wanted to show the human scientists what dragon technology could accomplish when combined with human engineering. When the research ships finally landed, Marcus walked out to meet them with Vera and Nova following behind. The effect on the human scientists was exactly what he had hoped for. Instead of seeing primitive alien creatures, they saw obviously intelligent beings demonstrating advanced abilities. Vera had positioned herself in a way that displayed her massive size, while clearly showing her injured wing and peaceful posture. Nova flew in controlled patterns around the group, shifting smoothly between matter and energy states to demonstrate the precise control that the biomechanical collar provided. Dr. Adams was a middle-aged man with gray hair and eyes that lit up with wonder as he watched Nova's aerial display. "This is absolutely incredible," he whispered. "The energy control is perfect. How is such precise matter-to-energy conversion even possible?" Marcus smiled. "That's what Vera and Nova want to teach us, Dr. Adams. They have millions of years of experience working with energy in ways that human science is just beginning to understand. But they need our help to survive as a species, and they believe that by working together, we can accomplish things that neither of our peoples could achieve alone." The formal introductions that followed were unlike anything in human experience. Vera demonstrated her intelligence by using the light pattern language to communicate complex mathematical concepts directly to the research team's computers. Nova showed how dragon abilities could enhance human technology by improving the efficiency of the researchers' scanning equipment just by touching it. But the real breakthrough came when Dr. Adams asked about the underground cities that Vera had described in her drawings. Through Nova's translation abilities, Vera explained that there were dozens of other dragons living in caverns deep beneath the planet's surface. They had been hiding from the cosmic radiation that had damaged their breeding chambers, but they were slowly dying as their energy reserves ran out. Marcus realized that this was the moment everything had been building toward. Dr. Adams, what if we could use human technology to repair the damage to their breeding chambers? Vera has shown me energy manipulation techniques that could revolutionize how we build quantum processors. If we shared our knowledge of biomechanical interfaces while they taught us their energy control methods, we might be able to save their entire species while advancing human technology by centuries. Dr. Adams looked at his fellow researchers, then back at Vera and Nova. Mr. Webb, what you're proposing would require approval from the highest levels of government. We're talking about sharing advanced technology with an alien species. Vera seemed to understand the hesitation in Dr. Adams's voice. She moved to a clear area and began drawing in the dirt with one massive claw. This time her pictures showed humans and dragons working together on projects that spanned solar systems. Ships powered by conscious energy manipulation, planets with perfectly controlled climates, communication networks that connected worlds across vast distances. She was showing them a vision of what the galaxy could become if their two species chose cooperation over fear. Nova added its own contribution by interfacing with the researchers' portable computers and displaying technical specifications that made the human scientists gasp in amazement. The young dragon was showing them exactly how dragon energy manipulation could be integrated with human engineering to create technologies that surpassed anything either species had achieved alone. Dr. Adams stared at the impossible readings on his instruments, then looked at Marcus with new respect. Mr. Webb, I think you just changed the course of human civilization. We need to get you and our new friends to Earth immediately. The people who make decisions about humanity's future need to see this for themselves. Marcus looked at Vera and Nova, both of whom were watching him with expressions that had become as familiar as family. 6 days ago, he had been a lonely engineer maintaining atmospheric processors on a forgotten world. Now he was humanity's first ambassador to an alien species, and possibly the architect of an alliance that would reshape the galaxy. But the most incredible thing that had happened wasn't the technology or the first contact or even saving Nova's life. It was a simple realization that intelligence and compassion could bridge any gap between different forms of life. As the research ships prepared to carry them toward Earth and toward a future that neither species could have imagined alone, Marcus watched Nova playing with quantum processors, while Vera shared energy manipulation techniques with fascinated human scientists. The little dragon still wore the biomechanical collar that had saved its life, but now that collar represented something much larger. It was proof that when different kinds of intelligence worked together with trust and determination, they could accomplish the impossible. Marcus smiled as he realized that his quiet life on Kepler, 442b, was about to become very complicated indeed. But looking at the excitement in the researcher's eyes and the hope in Vera's ancient gaze, he wouldn't have changed a single moment of the incredible journey that started with one desperate mother asking a stranger to save her child.